where we sit down here with TribalScale employees and special guests to have an authentic conversation. And today we're talking about OTT technology in the media industry. So to introduce myself, I'm Andrea Barros. I am the manager on the design team here. I started off in a more traditional design in print and branding, and I've been working in the digital product space, working with TV apps, making 10-foot experiences for TV and gaming consoles. And next to me, I have two Marks in the specialty OTT space.
Yeah. I'm the first Mark. My name is Mark Jefferson. I'm an Agile software engineer at TribalScale. One of my passions and interests is in OTT and media and entertainment space. I've been building apps for OTT and pay TV companies, building apps for the last 5 years. And off to Mark.
Yeah, so I'm the other Mark, the better Mark. Just kidding. I'm also been working in the OTT industry for the past 7 years, and Martha and I both share a passion in this space. I'm the senior Agile software engineer here at Tribal. Let's
Cool.
Head back to Andrea.
Yeah, so OTT, for the listeners that are on the air or watching, I'm sure not everyone understands the term and what it stands for. Yeah. So maybe we can cover what OTT is.
Yeah, so OTT, short form for over the top. The name is pretty underwhelming. Basically, it's basically a way to deliver content, over the traditional media. TV used to be delivered by satellite, cable, etc. Once the internet age came about, all these content could be delivered over internet. And the internet delivery is pretty much what OTT means. And it's actually not just limited to the TV space. For example, Skype is also considered as voice OTT. But instead of some of the well-known names such as Netflix and so on, keeping in mind, Skype is also OTT.
Yeah, and just to add on it, OTT is often misunderstood as it's expanded as over the top, but people think that it's called over the top because there's a small device that sits on top of your set-top box, but it really is not. Anything that bypasses traditional media would be OTT. So WhatsApp, which bypasses traditional messaging platform infrastructure, that's also OTT.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a misconception that OTT is only for 10-foot experiences, but really OTT is breaking from traditional like Rogers or Bell Media, like doing SMS through there. It has its own distributors, so something like WhatsApp or Skype or FaceTime for communications.
Absolutely. So what are some of the standard? So let's talk about the TV side. What are some of the OTT revenue types, right? So one, I can name the first one would be, so we have a term here called VOD, video on demand. So subscription-based video on demand is SVOD. Think about Netflix and so on. You pay a monthly fee, you get a bunch of content, unlimited kind of consumption. Another one, Mark, maybe you want to take over?
Yeah, the other type, one of the most popular types is AVOD, which is based on ads. Ads typically fund the platforms. The most popular ones today is probably YouTube, which they do have a different offering, which is premium, that comes under SVOD. And Crackle is another one, and a lot of anime apps typically are funded through ads. They would come under AVOD.
That's right. And we also have the TVOD, which is transactional. And so this is through, let's say, iTunes. And so it's a freemium type of subscription. Yeah. And then after you try out the model, then you would subscribe to content. It's interesting with these different types of revenues, especially from the design perspective. We have to, meet business and user objectives. And so depending on the type of revenue, this is is how we design the experience. So for example, for something like YouTube, it's ad-based. So this is where the autoplay experience comes from, where, you know, it's actually, they make more money from having continuous playback, and ads are playing back to back. And so it also brings up the question of, you know, what is ethical design? Because you know, we're not giving users control at the end of the day with the content they're watching. But you know, with some users that I talk to for subscription, not subscription, for ad-based OTT, they actually prefer to have that discoverability of the auto playing. So I think there's two sides to these design patterns.
Absolutely.
And the other thing, have you guys come across, a few of my friends, when they see like the Rogers app or the Bell app, which they use, they think that that's OTT. Is that OTT?
No, that's actually one of the major misconceptions. So there's another term called TV Everywhere. So that's slightly different. So TV Everywhere is a lot of the time traditional TV delivery method, so like Bell, Rogers, your cable. But you know, these companies want to reach out more than just, you know, watching TV from your set-top box. So they also deliver the same video content to your mobile phone and any streaming devices. So this type of approach is called TV Everywhere, where the OTT model usually just involves in, you know, pure internet delivery methods, so like Netflix. Basically, one of the biggest differences is licensing, right? So like, if I'm Rogers, if I'm DirecTV in the US, I have a different type of licensing when it comes to the content, the type of content I have. So I might be able to do TV Everywhere with some of the newer episodes on some of the more popular shows. Like, you know, if you watch Game of Thrones, I have the newest ones. Some versus some of the OTT platform, they might not have the latest episodes, right?
Yeah, I think for the subscription model, like why it got so popular over the years, it's because it really gave users the control again to kind of choose like what they want to watch, where they want to watch, and so it's kind of breaking away from that time-based experience that we see in traditional TV and timetables.
Right.
And with TV Everywhere, I actually see that there's a trend of it coming back with, you know, Bell 5, Rogers Ignite. You know, it's because it's showing the latest content, whereas something like Netflix, now that a lot of the licensed content is coming out of Netflix, you know, and so it's limited content, and so now these cable providers actually provide more in latest content.
Yeah, it seems like everyone in the industry is trying to jump into this. You know, we're gonna have our own streaming service. Like PBS have their own stream service, and then they're trying to push out the new Star Trek, and use that as a way to get people on the platform. Disney is definitely one of the biggest ones, trying to pull all their content off Netflix and, you know, Star Wars and all the goodies. So that's definitely an interesting trend.
And to speak about history, you know, it's sometimes good to know how the video industry evolved, because that is so foundational for the growth of OTT today. Back in the day, video, the pioneers for video or audio streaming on a PC was really Real Player and Microsoft's movie player. It's so far back that I can't even remember the name of that video player. But they were the two competitors. But then the internet bandwidth was so slow, they had to figure out efficient techniques to stream it quickly and efficiently and reliably. And that led to the discovery of HLS, which really changed and escalated the growth of OTT.
So like to Mark's point, back in the days we had, I think early 2000, even maybe in the 90s, we had a UDP-based delivery. And now we have HTTP-based delivery, which allows, you know, content distribution network to really scale the solution and deliver the content reliably, like Mark said. So Mark, what are some of the two popular way of doing HLS? Well,
the two popular streaming formats, one has to be, I would say, HLS. Like every popular app out there today definitely uses HLS, and for a good reason. It is the most efficient, and it's very reliable, it's very good. But one of the popular ones that's going to be, and I think it's going to replace HLS, is MPEG Dash. I believe that MPEG Dash is the first international video streaming format, and it gives a few flexibilities in terms of you could have a different codec rather than just one, and a few other DRM related stuff as well.
Yeah, and it provides for much smoother playback. There's no lag or glitch, right? And so I think one fun fact in design that's a trend today that I see actually is, back in the day when, streaming services, it was really pixelated, it was really laggy and glitchy. Now it's almost becoming like an aesthetic. So it was an unintentional consequence of streaming, but now you can see it in like Travis Scott's video with Drake and Sicko World. It's just like a glitchy, and they're kind of melting into each other. So it's kind of interesting how that aesthetic came about from an intentional consequence of a streaming service.
That's a very interesting point. Let's talk about, when we talk about OTT, obviously we like our gadgets. So what are some type of OTT gadgets we have?
Me personally, I've got two. One is a smart TV, and the other one is a Roku TV.
Cool.
Me personally, at home, I have Apple TV. I have a Chromecast, so Android TV.
Awesome.
And so I think some other ones that we need to think about also is mobile. It's actually something that we carry around the pocket, but we don't think about it all the time. It's not always a 10-foot experience. And so, when I'm designing, I'm thinking about this triangle of like, who am I designing for? What's the task at hand? And like, where are they using it? Are they on the go? If they're on the go, that's why Netflix works seamlessly like on mobile and when you're on the train watching offline content.
For sure. I definitely see a lot of those in Asia as well when I travel there. Just people have their phone on the subway, just like, they're shaking the subway and then watching TV. I can never do that myself, but it's definitely a trend.
Did you guys know that the way the OEM providers make money when people stream is by taking a cut from the subscription fee?
I've heard about this. What kind of fee are we talking about here?
Apple takes about 30% on subscriptions and 15% on renewals.
So that's a lot. I never knew that actually.
And even Roku and other small players do
I think one thing I forgot to mention too, in terms of devices, is gaming consoles. That's also a huge thing too, right? So not to forget about like Xbox One and PlayStation 4 as well, and apps there, and people stream Netflix on those gaming consoles.
And many other apps as well on the gaming consoles.
I think I recently watched, last year there was a big UFC fight, right? And because I don't have a traditional cable subscription anymore, so I was scrambling trying to find how to watch it. And actually I managed to find special event streams on my PS4. So I was actually able to pay just for the event and watch that way.
Right. That's interesting. And for me, I think like in terms of design for these different platforms, everyone has a very different guideline. A lot of clients that we work with, when we work with their design team, they want a very consistent design across all platforms, but usually, consistency is not the best thing. We want something that's more conventional to the guidelines of that platform because it lessens cognitive load. It helps users to easily navigate through the app, and it builds retention that way.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important to have a shared experiences across devices, but not be consistent in terms of UI. So just to give you a real example, like for me, my Netflix updated on my Apple TV, but it has an Android TV convention. And I was so confused in the beginning when it first changed, and it caused me quite a bit of frustration. So I think that it should be catered to that specific platform.
That's interesting. Also, I think, Mark, you have some interesting stats for us today.
Yeah, I did some digging, and I was really surprised to find out the stats globally. Like, it's very evident. If I ask you guys a question saying, hey, have you guys dropped your cable subscription and signed up for an OTT service, you're probably going to say yes.
Yes, I did,
But globally, like worldwide speaking, TV subscription increased, and they crossed the 1 billion mark for the first time last year.
Interesting. Which was counterintuitive.
Counterintuitive, and mostly because of people subscription increases in China that contributed to that 1 billion mark. And they're expecting it to go up next year. But what's fast catching up is the subscriptions on OTT.
Yeah.
In Europe, for one cable subscriber, they had 8 OTT subscribers.
Right.
That's the proportion in which it's growing.
Yeah.
And in North America, it's going down. People are not subscribing for cable,
That's right.
but rather they just sign up for the few ones that they choose and pick in OTT.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, the reason being that it's popular in Asia and other places, cable subscription is popular in Asia and other places, is because cable subscription is cheaper.
It's cheaper.
In North America, it's very expensive.
Yeah, that's right. But I think also now that, these big subscription-based companies are losing their licenses to a lot of these media spaces, they're coming up with individual OTT apps.
Right.
And so now they're, encouraging users to subscribe, and so that piles up. And so at the end of the day, I think a lot of the trend really will be, I think, users going back to TV everywhere apps instead of having subscription based with single licenses for media.
For sure. I think it will always be a kind of tug of war, right, between these two models. And I don't think anyone's really going to go away completely because people want a different way of consuming content. But Andrea, like, you're the designer here.
Yeah.
With all the new type of devices we're talking about with, OTT, with respect to OTT, and what are some of the insights you have when it comes to user interaction and so on with different devices?
So I think some main principles that are universal across all devices is that it should feel intuitive. It should be like if you're doing something for TV, the remote should be really an extension of your arm. You shouldn't be making it really difficult for someone to find things, and really it depends on the business model as well. Is it something that the company wants to do in terms of searchability, or is it something for discoverability? Those are totally different things. So also with TV, we need to now consider voice UX, like that's going to be a common trend. And so with voice UX, thinking about in terms of searchability, what is the easiest way for me to get to point A to point B with the least amount of utterances.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, we actually just got a question from Justin saying, what are some of the favorite tools that you use to prototype for OTT?
So it's a really tricky question because especially if it's so OTT again has different types of platforms, right? So in terms of TV, the best way is honestly to engineer it and actually have someone play with the remote and actually play with the interactions. But if I don't have that in hand, I actually mock up in InVision with the remote on the side. And so you can actually click through to see what the interactions are there and how you get from page to page. For mobile, again, either Marvel, InVision for software prototyping. Those are great tools.
Awesome. That's good to know. Okay, so that's very interesting. Now let's talk about some of the trends in OTT. For example, we talk about sports. I briefly talked about how I watch sports on demand for my UFC fight. But I guess when it comes to Olympics, big soccer matches, none of you have traditional TV subscription anymore.
No.
So how do you guys watch these sports events?
First of all, I don't watch sports, so that helps.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Costa.
Well, you either, like, my options have always been either you go to a group setting, to watch a soccer game. It's often fun to go watch it within a pub or your friend's house. Hopefully they have cable subscription. But I think I've always subscribed to events that I need to watch.
Okay, so like real time on demand. I think I did that with the Olympics. I just paid TSN or whoever for the month that the event is going on, and cancel it after and stream anywhere I want.
But I think there is a trend in kind of people getting together to watch or interact with like OTT platforms. Like I see definitely a trend, almost like you know, when I was a kid, like reading R.L. Stine books of Goosebumps and having to choose your own adventure. And so having some sort of model like that and having a group of friends, you know, all multiple choice, choosing one ending for a movie or something like that, I think that would be really popular.
Right. And, you know, when I was digging through the stats, and I was really surprised to find, and if you see the pattern, I really think people are responding saying that cable subscriptions are expensive and they probably should figure out a way to reduce that price. You know, rather than today people just bundle up packages.
Yeah.
You know, they say, hey, if you subscribe to cable TV, you get Netflix with it.
Yeah.
Rather, I think they should work on bringing the price down.
Yeah. I guess a lot of it had to do with like licensing fees and so on with the content, and probably there's a huge margin there. But talking about trend, actually, we got an interesting question. You know, is voice interaction the future for some of these OTT interactions? What do you think, Andrea?
Sorry, can you say that again? I was just reading, someone was actually just wrote a question here. Do you mind if I answer that first? Okay. So actually there's two of them. So like, is voice interaction the future and an essential design consideration? If so, any examples? So I think voice interaction is essential, especially for specific platforms like Fire TV, because they do integrate with Alexa now. So it's something to consider for your OTT platform. And the way that I would design it is work from the end first. You know, think of what the answer will be, what the search results will be, and then work backwards and think of questions there. Do user research and see what type of different utterances people would say in order to come up with these questions.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
And there's another one here. Are you familiar with TSN Go? TSN provided on your desktop, iPad based on cable subscription, but not all cable companies. So that would be a subscription based.
I believe, no, TSN Go is not subscription based. It's actually you use your cable provider credentials to watch.
Okay, it's so like A&E Network or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's TV everywhere, basically.
It's TV everywhere.
TV everywhere,
it's on-demand TV content.
That's right.
But the content that's served on your by your cable provider and not OTT. So meaning you might not have. So for example, if you take HBO Go, and Game of Thrones is a good example. You might have the last 2 seasons on HBO Go, but not the entire season, all the seasons of Game of Thrones. But if you subscribe to HBO Now, you would have all seasons of Game of Thrones.
So it's almost like these companies are pairing up with other license-based content in order to provide users the latest and greatest things, right?
Yeah, that's one way of giving the freedom to the user to not watch, to be able to watch whatever they want, but not everything, but to an extent.
That's right. And I think ultimately the best experience is to give the user a sense of control. And choice.
True. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, here at TribalScale, I'm always excited to look forward what's next when it comes to technology. For example, OTT, you know, I also think about pro gaming. You know, Twitch is getting huge. Pro gaming space is getting a lot of traction. You know, how do we do with the content on that side? And also other things like original content. All the like Netflix is making their own content originals, and so is Amazon, so is YouTube now. So that's very interesting.
But I think it's really that's to battle, with licenses that are being taken away. So not naming names of different movies, but you're starting to see like the plot and the characters almost exactly the same. They want to mimic that same
like
templating. Yeah, exactly. So they can retain users on that platform. That's
right. And another interesting thing, actually, when you talk about Netflix, is recently, they've released like interactive movie. The Black Mirror episode of Bandersnatch.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know if you play with it. It was very interesting as you watch the movie and you're making choices. It's too far stretched for Andrea.
It's too far stretched. Yeah. But yeah, for example, on gaming consoles even, right? A lot of these gaming apps, Jackbox. You know, you actually like play with it on your phone with a group of friends in a social setting. It's really bringing people together again. Instead of isolating users and just having that single contact with their TV. I think that's really a big trend. Where bringing people together for a special event, like a sports event or something like that. How
you actually kind of, you know, like in the social media age, everybody's kind of on their own device. Now how we can bring people together as well in this approach. That's very interesting. I think for me personally, I think there's also going to be a kind of a blend between traditional movies and interaction, like games. For example, some of the games are very well written, has a lot of in-depth content. You know, I played the game Last of Us, and, you know, it's so well written. A lot of times I'm playing the game, I just kind of just want to see what happens in the game. You know, now with Netflix, the interactive show, you know, there's kind of a new genres coming out where, you know, maybe in the future, you know, movies and games are kind of blend together.
A cinematic experience to gaming, right? And I think that's going to be the trend for sure.
And one of the areas where I've seen innovation is contextual ads. You know, we were talking about ads introduced in Instagram and so on. I think it's not going to go away. I think, in fact, it's going to grow. I saw a prototype of how contextual ads for voice was used. So in a radio app, imagine you're playing a radio on your phone and that you're listening to a live station. That ad could be curated to you. And like, you know, in the live station, ads play at the same time. Imagine you hear an ad that's specific to you, and you hear an ad that's specific to you.
Absolutely.
That would be different, and that's another big way for companies to monetize. But that's another area I think we would see in use in the future.
I think also seeing ads like on screen and being able to, let's say for the example of having a car and then being able to choose the color while that video is playing live to really you know, see in perspective that would be to your own liking.
Actually that's funny because Mark showed me this company that works with a bunch of OTT platforms like Roku and so on. They actually had a solution. Like they were showing a BMW commercial, and while there's like a dialogue on the bottom, and you can use your remote control to actually choose the color of the car, which was very interesting.
I agree.
You know, one of the reasons is typically when ads are played in traditional media, people walk away from the screen, but now that gives an engagement for them to sit and watch through the whole ad.
Exactly. I think so. Keeping engagement for sure. Okay, let's see. If there's no other questions then, we're going to end the podcast. Okay, so this concludes our episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you're interested in more content, learning more about OTT, visit our website at www.tribalscale.com. And also, if you're interested in working with us, apply online and visit our website at tribalscale.com.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Hosting the podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Bye-bye.